Hi, and welcome to A Class of Their Own podcast, revealing the human stories behind their name. We will hear honest and intimate reflections from our guests who, despite their circumstances, shape a world that reflects their unique visions of success. Join me, Mira Magecha, to learn from these inspirational people and take the first step to make your own change. On today's episode, we're joined by Harriet JW. Hi, Harriet.
Hello.
How are you?
Not too bad.
So thank you so much for being here today. We were introduced only a short while ago, but when you were introduced to me, I was told how open and vulnerable you are, and how proud the person who introduced us is of you and the journey you've been on.
That's nice.
And then I've been following you on social media, and actually I agree that you are open and vulnerable, and so I am really looking forward to where this conversation takes us.
That is a lovely way of saying I'm an oversharer. So thank you.
No, I don't mean that by 1 minute. I think there's pieces of your story that I've heard and read that people don't talk about. So I think there's some real interest in terms of where this conversation may take us.
Great, let's do it.
Who is Harriet?
Oh, that's a big question. First thing that came into my head when you said that was a mum, because that's a relatively new part of who is Harriet. But I guess if I look to like my kind of deepest core, I'm someone that is focused. I'm someone that is... It's funny because I had a conversation with my acupuncturist recently that sometimes turned into therapy, and she asked me quite a similar question to this. And I said, I'm fun. She like raised an eyebrow. It's like, sorry, what?
You only know me in the acupuncture
I was like,
room.
hey, maybe I'm not actually fun anymore, but maybe that's something I connect with from my youth. I'm focused. I'm a good friend. I'm a mum. I'm a sister, a daughter, a dog mum. And I'm somebody that is, I would say, focused on authenticity and doing things my own way.
Oh, I love that. We'll get into that one. If you were at a party, how would you describe who you are and what makes you you?
I think there's a lot of like history that has like altered or changed my identity in some ways that I'm sure we'll get into. So if you'd asked me this when I was at a party when I was in my 20s, I would say that I was the best person at being at that party, and I would stay up the latest, drink the most, other things, and just be the best at having fun. But now I would probably ask you what you do for work and sit in a corner and talk about your work.
Which one's more fun?
I would ask my wife which one's more fun. She would say the latter because she didn't enjoy the previous version of me. I mean, she must have enjoyed it to the point that she married me. But, you know, the biggest party animal is not always the best wife. More fun. It depends who I'm talking to. I think some people hate to talk about work because it's not anything to do with them, but because it's not anything to do with their identity, I should say. But because my work is now such a big part of my identity, it's something I enjoy talking about, and I enjoy hearing other people talk about their work.
Okay. So we'll get into who and what you do. In fact, no, let's just start. What do you do?
Yeah,
what is work?
Work for me is a company called Secret Sessions that started as a YouTube channel around 13 years ago. Featured anyone from Bastille, Kacey Musgraves, Lumineers, lots of really big artists. And then it turned into a live event as well here in London. So we had shows at the Hospital Club, Soho Farmhouse. And then lockdown happened and changed the way that I worked, like it did for many. And that's when we focused more on artist development and helping artists to build audiences and businesses around their talent.
And what got you into that? Because that's not where you started.
No. So I was actually a filmmaker, not a musician, which is always a surprise to some people. So yeah, when I first graduated, I studied at St. Martin's and I did fine art on a video kind of pathway. I always knew that I wanted to make films. And YouTube had just kind of launched as I graduated, and all of my peers wanted to show their beautiful work on the white walls of the London art galleries. And I was like, YouTube, this is so cool. Like, you can just get your work straight to, the homes of people all over the world. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do. But I was always fascinated by music and picture and how they interacted with one another, more from the side of the audience, and like how music and image can, I guess, bring out emotions and what music kind of does to people, as opposed to from the artist side, which is very much about the creation of music. I was much more from the other side of like, how can we use this to bring people together, bring out emotions, put on events, create connection. Right. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started. So it was me at the beginning, running around London with a camera on my back, meeting Ed Sheeran in Shoreditch around the corner, or Lumineers in a warehouse in Hackney, Kacey Musgraves in like a dingy pub in the basement in South London. And that was like...
how it all kicked off.
Yeah.
And when you think about those days and times, what emotion do you get or feel?
I think I guess a sort of respect for the consistency. And like, I was not a business owner back then. Like, the money side of it barely even crossed my mind. There was no exchange of money ever. It was more like a passion project and a creative project and a sort of just like a love for the game. Like, I walk around here in the back streets of Shoreditch and I'm just like, I've walked these roads so many times, just like going for that meeting that's going to change everything that never does. And like just building something, but never really knowing, there wasn't an end goal in mind. And all of that kind of consistency and mindset stuff is exactly what I teach the artists that we work with now, this building of like showing up, consistency, and the compound effect of like small actions, as opposed to this like, oh, you got a viral TikTok, you've made it, because it's never really about that if you meet people that have had any sort of success.
And what was success for you growing up?
Scoring goals.
Scoring goals? Yeah. Hold on, you do music and film, now it's scoring goals. Where does that come from? So
my childhood was very much about sport. Like, that was my big love. So, I was the girl playing football with the boys at break time at primary school. I was the only girl on the Sussex roller hockey team when I was a teenager. I played girls football for Sussex, threw the discus, was the champion shot put thrower of Sussex because I was the only one that threw it. It was just, I was on every team, played every sport, and that was what I loved to do.
And what happened?
So when I was 16, I was hit by a car and spent 2 weeks in a coma. And broke pretty much everything from the waist down. Actually, I broke all my ribs. So I guess from here down, had a lot of injury. And then, I guess just realized that I wouldn't ever be playing to the same standard again. So I mostly stopped playing sport at that point.
Before we get into stopping playing sport, you're 16 years old. You've been playing sport for all of your life at this point. Yeah. You're then in a coma. What's going on for you at that point before you go, I'm not going to be playing sport because I can't get to that level?
Literally what was going on was that I woke up in a white room, very much like how you imagine it in a film. And I think that there was quite a long period of time where I laid there and wondered what was going on. But knowing intensive care units, you have like a personal nurse that's just looking after you. So it can't have been very long. So I don't know if I was sort of maybe like started to be a bit lucid earlier on. So felt like that was a sort of long time. One thing that I also forgot to mention is that this happened over Christmas. So I'd slept through Christmas. So I woke up on New Year's Day, and it happened on the 22nd. If my mum listens to this, she'll be like, she's getting all her dates wrong, but I was asleep. And yeah, so just sort of wondering what was going on. And I always remember that Christmas number one was that song from Donnie Darko, Mad World. So I remember this was playing out in a movie. It was a white room. I'd woken up. Mad World from Donnie Darko was playing, and I wondered what was going on. And then my dad came to the room, and if I'm like deeply honest, I thought that I'd done something naughty. I was quite a naughty child. I thought I'd done something naughty in a club that had gone wrong, and that's why I was lying in a hospital bed. So I was worried that I was in trouble. And my dad came in and said, "You've been involved in a car accident." And I went, "Thank God for that."
I'm not sure there's many kids that would go, "Thank God for that."
I'm not in trouble.
You're not in trouble, okay.
And then from then on, it was just everybody rallying around and giving me lots of love and lots of attention, and me just being like, "It's not a big deal. Come on, let's just get over it. Let's get on. Come on, that's what 16-year-olds do. It'd be a very different story now. I'd be like, oh God." So yeah, I just, the next year was just sort of appointment after appointment after appointment. I guess sort of finding out who I was and who I was going to be again, because that my life was sort of planned out in my head. I wanted to study sport at Loughborough University. I wanted to maybe be an athlete. If I couldn't be an athlete, I'd be a PE teacher. That was like my...
Your alternatives.
Yeah, my alternative. So yeah, I guess I had a lot of figuring out to do. I was still like... that age is just so much about your friends. I just wanted to get out with my friends again. And yeah, spent a lot of time at home being driven around. Like, my family are amazing, which I probably don't tell them enough. But, I didn't like the hospital food. My mum and dad got me a takeaway every night in the hospital. Got my own room, had a TV, a lava lamp. Showing my age.
And could you walk? Like, did you have mobility at this point?
Yeah, so I had... my biggest injury was that I'd broken my pelvis in 12 places, which is a really dangerous injury because you can bleed all of your body's blood into your pelvis. So you can die if you break your pelvis. I mean, there were lots of reasons why I could have died, but that was one of them. And I had external fixators, which are basically metal that comes out and across your front. And I had metal in my legs, metal in my ankle, metal in my hip. So I wouldn't say I was walking to a very high standard. But I think I went Zimmer frame while still in hospital, probably Zimmer frame at home, and then would go to the physio and then learnt to walk on 2 crutches, then 1 crutch, and then eventually kind of hobbled around. And it's just like a very gradual process. But I also had I remember the most upsetting injury for me was that I had a brain injury, and my brain had swelled and it had pressed on a nerve, which had given me a cross eye. So I looked completely different to what I thought I looked like. So every time I looked in the mirror, I was like, that's not me. Luckily that corrected itself. But yeah, so it was just like, I guess, getting to know myself and who I was going to be again, but also coming with all the like challenges of suddenly relying on your parents again at age 16. So, yeah.
And you thought that you were in a coma because you were in trouble from a night out. Yeah. You're then out of the coma and not as mobile and independent as you would like to be or had been. Mm. What's the emotional or mental health that you're going through within yourself at this moment? Mm.
So I remember a couple of things. One was that I didn't have a day where... So I was in hospital for a month initially. 2 weeks of that I was asleep. And then a year later, I actually had to go back into hospital for a month. So I did 2 months in total. And I remember in those 2 months, I never had a day without a visitor, without a friend visiting. So I felt very like, I guess, loved by my family and friends. But I felt very resistant to help, which is impossible.
Yeah.
And I think I lashed out at some point. Like I can remember some points like lashing out at my sister or my dad or my mum a lot over the years. And I remember the one with my dad, I remember it's because he'd said to me, well done, because I'd brushed my teeth on my own. And I was angry that, obviously, that someone was saying well done for brushing your teeth, which is something you're supposed to do 2 times a day every day. And, there was probably some misdirected anger based on the situation. But yeah, I think looking back on it, there was just a lot of love and a lot of care. And, I can remember my mum because they must have felt so helpless as well because, what can you do? Yeah. I had like scratches and scrapes all over my body, and my mum would before I went to bed with a little cotton wool pad, put that bio oil stuff on every single little cut.
To make sure you didn't scar.
To make sure I didn't scar, which I did. But I'm sure it would have been worse, Mum, if you hadn't done that. Thank you.
Are there any stories that you would like to share that you think about when that happened?
Yeah, so I think... So something that sort of came back into my life as a big importance around 2014, I was fitness. And I decided to run in a marathon because I thought that was like what you did. I'm going to get fit, right? I'll sign up to a marathon and then it will just happen.
Yep.
So I signed up to London Marathon 2014 and got a place. I think maybe I thought that I just would never get a place.
The ballot was never going to come through.
And you have to raise quite a lot of money. And I did it for a charity called Road Peace. That was the charity that... So my mum did a lot of campaigning after I got hit by a car because it happened on a very busy stretch where boy racers raced their cars and I got hit by a boy racer. So she... campaigned with another woman who'd actually lost her child on that street to get bollards put on the road. And the charity that helped them was a charity called Road Peace, so that's who I ran for. There was a piece in the local paper that was like, Brighton girls running the marathon, and the picture of me. And I got a message on Facebook that said... You won't remember me, bearing in mind this is like 10, 12 years later. You won't remember me, but my name is Martin. I was the ambulance driver that picked you up on that day. I just want to say congratulations. It's so good to see you doing well. You don't have to reply to this. I just wanted to let you know that, that I'm impressed with everything you've achieved. And... At that point, I had already been contacted by Radio 4's Listening Project, which is a feature where 2 people have a conversation like this, but it will be people that are connected, like a parent and a daughter or something. And they'd asked me to come on the show, and I said, I don't want to have a conversation with my parents about getting run over. No way. And I ended up replying to Martin and said, firstly, thank you so much. But I've been contacted by Radio 4 and asked if I want to go on the listening project. I've said no, but if you would be willing to come on it with me, then I'll go on it. And Martin, we've since established, would come and sit by my side after he finished his paramedic shift, like every night. My mum got to know him a little bit while I was in coma because he just kept coming back to check on me. And it turns out that he had a daughter the same age as me, and this was why the event really heavily affected him. And he never really went back to driving an ambulance after that event because of how it affected him. And this was all stuff that I discovered
on the project. So
he eventually said yes. He initially said no. He was like, no, I'm not interested. Like, he's an understated guy. But yeah, Martin and I went and had this conversation that can be searched on the internet, but it's only 3 minutes long. It's an edit. And we actually had a 40-minute conversation live on air. That was our first ever conversation. And he came to my 30th. He sends me Christmas cards, birthday cards.
Beautiful.
Yeah. He's an amazing guy. And it's just, such a great human story, I think, that comes from
a
tragedy.
Genuine place. Yeah. And also comes from such a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
And leading up to the accident, when things changed, you were really clear on what you wanted to do. How did you get into the switch, which was either film and now music?
Yeah.
What helped you make that decision and transition from sport?
So it was time. So I did my GCSEs and I did them in hospital, from the hospital room. And so the next stop after this was sixth form college. And I started a PE A-level. So I was carrying on that sport. I was like, oh, it's fine. It'll, fix itself somehow. And it was in doing that I realised that it wasn't, I tried to play football a couple of times or, do some of the stuff that I did before and realised that I wasn't going to be doing it to the same standard. So I dropped the PE A-level, and the two other subjects I was studying, I was doing three. I was doing law, and I was doing media studies and photography. And I got really into photography. And then I think in taking photos and enjoying taking photos, I realised at some point that film was the same but more frames a second, and I wanted to explore that. So I went to another college to study visual arts, and that was very much based around like learning how to make films, but also the kind of artistic side and learning how to create and thinking about what you want to create about. And that's why I went to St. Martin's to study fine art, because I already knew how to make films, how to edit films, how to, do all the technical side. But I really wanted to learn how to sort of think critically and creatively around this medium, I guess. So yeah, it just sort of went from there really. And I kind of finished St. Martin's wanting to make music videos, and often in my tutorials and crits, the teacher would say, oh, well, your work just looks like a music video, like probably as a not a positive thing.
Yeah, and like a negative criticism.
Being like, amazing, I'm going to make music videos. And then, yeah, so my first, I guess, acoustic session that I put on YouTube was me first experimenting with music videos.
This episode is brought to you by Adaventa, a leading online classifieds group and champion for sustainable commerce. With over 25 digital marketplaces, including Marketplatz, Leboncoin, Mobile.de, Klein & Zanger, Photocasa, InfoJobs, and Kijiji, and more. They connect millions of people to trade on a daily basis. Adaventa is committed to being purpose-driven and both an inclusive work and marketplace for everyone by creating a space where everyone feels like they belong and are valued for their difference. To find out more information, click in the links in the show notes below. You've been through other journeys and other challenges along the way. Do you want to talk a bit about what's happened in the last few years?
Yeah, so I would say my second biggest life hurdle was me and my wife trying to have our son, Jack, who we now have. Happy ending. But yeah, so we did, I think, 6 years of IVF. And in those 6 years, there was miscarriages on both sides. There was multiple rounds of IVF. There was a lot of, like heartache and challenges, a lot of money. Yeah. So yeah, I think that, and it was interesting as having these two big things juxtaposed. And the second one, for me, was a lot harder than the first one. And I think it's the kind of age that I was, kind of 30 to 37, at the time of life. But there's also something in that idea of like the control, getting run over was just out of my control. And my journey back to health was kind of out of my control. I just had to, follow the instructions of the doctors and let my body heal. And in some ways there was like, I was the kind of hero of that story. But when you're doing IVF and it's failing and failing and failing, it feels like it's in control because it's your body, but you're not the hero in the same way because actually you just feel like you're failing and your body's failing. So I think from a kind of emotional and mental health side, going through IVF for me was a lot of a bigger challenge than being hit by a speeding car and spending 2 weeks in a coma.
And you and your wife both went through IVF treatments? Yeah.
So initially my wife was going through IVF and she has stage 4 endometriosis. So there were some challenges there to the point where the doctors said, let's try with Harriet's eggs instead. So initially we kind of wanted to both have one, carry one.
Yeah.
So we started doing it that way, using my eggs, but my wife to carry. So we were both part of the process. And that was how most of our IVF cycles were. So Megan, my wife, initially did a few rounds, and then it switched to me, and then I did, what did we do? Maybe like 7 or 8 rounds before we got Jack, but we were getting embryos, they just weren't implanting.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like, sorry, no, over and over. But then in amongst that, so our donor is actually my wife's brother who lives in Canada. So we were in Canada, so we did some like home insemination so his wife is a nurse, so she got all the supplies like the what do you call them? Like the syringes and like the cleaning liquid. And I actually ended up getting pregnant and then ended up having a miscarriage, which I didn't find out until the 12-week scan. So we'd had all these loads of IVF and then it was like, oh my God, we've like done it ourselves. We've cracked the system. Yeah. We're never even going to have to pay for it again. We'll just do it like this. And then we had that like crashing low of that miscarriage. And that was probably one of the lowest points for me, I'd say, that happening. And then after that, we got back on it with IVF here in the UK. And then my wife got pregnant, which was great. Then she had a miscarriage, not so great. Carried on, more IVF. She got pregnant again, had another miscarriage. So at this point, we're at 3 miscarriages. And then we had like 2 embryos left, and we put them both in. She got pregnant. And then when, you see those videos on Instagram where people get like the 2 lines and they're like, yeah. When you're that far into the journey, you get the 2 lines and you're like, okay, great. When's the miscarriage going to happen?
Yeah.
And it just never did. And then, Jack was born in October 2021. He's 2.5.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
How much did the system support you as a gay couple and the failure of the IVF, but also the support when miscarriages happened as a gay couple?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So we were in the private system. So the answer is, in some boroughs, not at all. It's a postcode lottery. So initially, when we began IVF, we lived in Hackney, which is an amazing borough for IVF, in that you get 3 rounds for free if you're a gay couple. If you are not... So in Hackney, regardless of whether you're in a straight relationship or a gay relationship, you get the same treatment. Amazing. But where we live now, in Margate, the borough that we're in, same-sex couples, I think it might have changed now, as in last year. Same-sex couples didn't get any IVF support at all. So the way that they were able to do it was a loophole by saying, if you require donated sperm, basically same-sex couples, in your treatment, you can't have it on the NHS. So most of the women that we know that have kids in our area who've gone through IVF have had to pay for it, whereas the straight couples we know that have gone through IVF haven't had to pay for it. Yeah. So there's that, which is obviously feels hugely unfair. And then I think just kind of privately, there's some stuff as well that was just a bit overlooked, I would say. So, initially when we started treatment, there was something that was quite clear that was happening with me that wasn't looked at, that I think would have been looked at if I had been in a straight couple. And the reason why that is because if you're in a straight couple and you go for IVF, you've likely had a period of trying before. Mm-hmm. So they'll look maybe more deeply at why it's not working. Whereas if you go as a gay couple to do IVF, you clearly haven't been, unless you're an idiot, you clearly haven't been trying. Yeah. So they're like, okay, fine, let's go. As in, like, you'll be great. But I had a thyroid issue that they hadn't noticed. So I did a couple of rounds that I don't think ever would have worked, to the point where I said, because I was like...
Switched on and you knew something wasn't quite right.
Switched on / completely obsessive. So I had my spreadsheets and so we ended up actually getting a refund for a couple of rounds because I picked out this thing and went and said, like, if we weren't a same-sex couple, you would have looked at this. And they were like, yeah, maybe you're right, actually. But the whole world of IVF is just, you have to navigate it yourself. It's a bit of a cattle market. They're just going through everyone with sort of the same treatment, and you have to work pretty hard to find a clinic. And I think it's just a financial thing. Like, the more attention you get, the more it costs, basically. So you're sort of in control of your own journey and being like, oh, this is happening. Oh, I'm on day 1. Oh, I'm on day 3. What needs to happen now? Okay, can you do this? Can you do that? But yeah, so it's a journey.
Jack is a beautiful little boy. who you had a little viral Instagram post go viral.
3.5 million views so far, which is crazy because
it was such a sweet video. Do you want to just describe it?
Yeah, so Jack has this sweet little relationship with one of our bin men in that he sits on the step every Wednesday morning and waits for this bin man to arrive, whose name is Bill, that we've since discovered. And every Wednesday, Bill runs up the stairs. He doesn't say a lot. He says, "Morning, Jack." And Jack says, "Hello, Bill." And Bill gives him a little mint imperial. And then Jack runs back in the house, like, completely overjoyed. And we have to, like, hammer up this mint and give him little sections of it. But yeah, I just made a video of it. And it has got 3.5 million views so far.
It's such a cute video. Like, honestly, it's just so... There's something about it that's just really heartfelt.
Yeah.
When you think about where you are in life today, what is success going forward?
It's funny because I kind of do a lot of this work with my clients around what does success look like and then like how are we going to get there. But it's something that I struggle with generally to just sort of look into the future. You know, I mentioned briefly with secret sessions, like there wasn't really an end goal. I was just doing it. And this is kind of the way that I've basically lived. But I think what I know that success is for me is more about time and space. And it's a feeling that I'm chasing, I think, which is like contentedness, time with family. You know, it's never for me about the stuff. Like I actually actively try and get rid of stuff. Like there's no car I want. There's no, you know, for example, we want to do an extension on our house. And the reason why we want to do this extension is very much about the space it will bring, the time that we'll have with family in this social space. It's not about like being able to like Instagram the new extension or whatever. So yeah, success for me is that. And I think living in the moment and being content is something that I've struggled with. So that to me is like the goal.
Why have you struggled with being in the moment?
I don't know. I think I've so I have ADHD, which was diagnosed relatively recently. So that's like an interesting, I guess, addition. But a lot of things make sense within that context because I think there's this idea of like always on to the next thing. And I even remember my parents would say, "Oh, you're just always on to the next thing." And I feel like that in like daily life, you know, like I'll be on the dog walk thinking about the coffee we're going to get, and then we get the coffee, and then I'm going to be thinking about what happens when we get home, and then I get home and I'm thinking about like it's always like the next. I find it quite hard to sit still generally. So I think feeling and being content, there's a kind of slowness attached to that. And I think I find slowness quite difficult. So, you know, the sort of classical content moments are like playing with your kid on the beach, walking the dog under a sunset, you know, having this long drawn out dinner. But most of the time I'm in those moments, I'm like,
let's get on with the next.
Come on.
The next course. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm always trying to find what can help me be more like that.
And if we think about achievement, you've achieved a lot. You've worked with some great artists. You've managed your business. You almost died. You've had a child through 8 failed IVF treatments. What more could you need to go, actually, you need to be in the present moment?
It's funny, and I think most people would say this. So when you said you've achieved quite a lot, in my head I went, and then you listed them and I was like, oh yeah, that's good. So you said you've achieved quite a lot. You've worked with some credible artists. And in my head I went, well, they've achieved a lot. You know, and I think anybody that has achieved anything would probably be doing the same. And I'm sure this is the trap that we have to all stay away from. So, you know, I imagine the most successful artists, film stars, sportsmen, people would sit there and go, you've achieved a lot. And they'll be like, well, no, I still need this. So the trap is to not be always reaching for the next thing and to be happy with what you have. And, you know, there's that phrase that you have to be, in order to be happy with what you get, you have to be happy with what you've got. And that's something that I try and work with a lot. But I do feel like genuinely quite happy with where everything is right now. As in, right now, today. If you ask me tomorrow, it might not be true anymore. But, you know, it's about trying to, you know, gratitude is such an easy but overlooked thing. And you know, I know the things that make me feel good now. It's just remembering to do them and to not get so caught up in the minutiae of mainly the internet, I think, is the thing that can pull us all away and make us lose perspective. Yeah, because the internet is just so amazing and everybody's having an amazing world and life and I'm not fulfilling my bit of that wonderfulness. Yeah. Yeah, I think there is that kind of comparison, but for me as well, it's a lot about the kind of the headspace that it takes. You know, I open up my phone and there's clients on Slack, there's friends, family on WhatsApp, there's Instagram, there's posts I haven't done, there's, you know, notifications that I haven't looked at, and everything just becomes this like tiny, tiny world when actually for creative people, you need expansiveness, you need white space, you need freedom, time, space, and you have to work quite hard to give that to yourself, I think. What's your greatest fear? My greatest fear? I think my greatest fear is just being that, like always chasing and like dying, being like, I was just always chasing something that didn't exist. I think that's it. I think it's never feeling content or happy and always feeling like I'm chasing something. What is your next thing? So I look at things like, even though they're so closely intertwined, like in business and in life. So in business, I think it is really important to define what success looks like, but both from a financial point of view. And I think on that side of it, having a freedom number, which is like, this is how much I need to earn to be able to do X, Y, Z. And X, Y, Z needs to be the list of like how you want to live. So, you know, for me and my wife are kind of agreed on the things that we want that are to not, I mean, she says this because I don't actually drink alcohol, but she's like, I don't want to have to look at the price of the bottle of wine. I want to have whichever one I want. I would like to be able to travel when we want and where we want for however long we want and not have to worry about, you know, the time of year that we fly. So we spend a month every year in Canada. She lives in Canada. She doesn't live in Canada. She lives with you. Her brother lives in Canada. Her parents and her family live in Canada. So we spend a month there and, you know, it's like, oh, should we not go at peak time, and like just not having to worry about any of that stuff. I know that she'd love to be able to fly her family over as and when they want to come or feel like. So yeah, there's a number that will allow us to live our life in the way we want to. And I want my business and her business, she runs a yoga studio that's very successful, to support that number. So it's not about, hey, I want to make £1 million. It's like, I want to be able to take this much profit out of my business every month so that I can do X, Y, Z with my family. So that's on the business side, what that looks like. And I'm getting closer to working out exactly what that is. I don't have it down completely. But in terms of the business as well, I'm not looking to grow it exponentially in that, because we work on the internet, there's always this thing of like, we're going to grow our music platform to 10 million artists. And it's like, well, how can you help 10 million artists? So I want to find that sweet spot that really allows us to help people, but also is unashamedly a business that makes money. Because part of what we do is teach people how to build businesses. So if we're there going, oh, well, we just, have it for free, it's fine, we just want to help. Like, no, because that's not the message we're putting out into the world. So my next goal is that we have 50 clients, 40 in our community offer, which is more of like a group serving program, and 10 in our that we work with really closely. So we have got a little bit of a way to go to that, but it's very much in reach. And then I think when I look at my life, we would love to give Jack a sibling in whatever way that might look like. If we can't, I would never be anything other than grateful for what we have with him. But the same again, like, I think I have to stay away from the phrase, I will be happy when, and say that I am happy now. Yeah. But what would add to what our lives and how we're able to live is at the extension on our house, the freedom number being hit. I would like to only really work 4 hours a day. I think that's a really good amount of time for maximum creativity and to be able to be productive as opposed to just busy. Yeah. And I think there's definitely an element of me that wants to change the industry for creative people, for in the music industry. And recognition is a byproduct of that change. So I'd be lying if I said, like, I just want to run this little service business that does little coaching. Like, I want that success of having real successes that come through our programs. Yeah.
Because it helps others along the way, and it helps you help them by creating a brand around you as well.
Yeah, and I think the sort of thing that the big why for me is like thinking about the younger me running around, like working so hard and so consistently, thinking about how the industries at large would never have paid that person for doing any of that. And it's the same with these musicians in their bedrooms, like putting out singles after single after single in return for like 40 pence on Spotify or, on any of those big tech platforms. So yeah, it is about like helping creative people that I genuinely think are like, we get more and more AI and ChatGPT. Creativity is just going to be a skill that is so necessary, but it's just being like, they're all being shafted by these big businesses. So that's what it's really about for me.
We started this conversation with who is Harriet? We've had a bit of a reflective conversation, so I'd like to go straight back to that and go, is there anything you would change based on the conversation of introducing yourself and saying who Harriet is now?
I think I'd still start with a mum, because that's, the most important relationship to me right now, is, making sure that he's becomes a great guy. I think I struggled with the question initially because, there's all those adjectives that you want to use to describe yourself. Like, I'm fun, I'm exciting, I'm quirky, I'm funny, when actually I think I am quite like serious and focused now and reliable, consistent, which are not like jazzy or exciting words, but I think they have a place for people. And I definitely like, I'm still naughty and I'm still cheeky underneath. But yeah, I think there's just a sort of focus there that I'm happy with right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed that conversation, then please share A Class of Their Own podcast with your friends and family and keep spreading the word to those that haven't discovered us yet. It makes a huge impact on our ability to have the people you want. Keep being you through connection, learning and play. You are a class of your own.